All right. Well, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here if you guys are ready. Might have some stragglers coming in. But yeah, welcome. We always love coming out here to the Scripps Swim and Racquet Club. So thanks you guys for having us for our Pickleball Injury Prevention workshop today. My name is Dr. Grayson. I'm from Auto-Ness Physical Therapy.
I'm Dr. Jina Oliphant. I'm also a physical therapist at Auto-Ness Physical Therapy.
Yeah, and then we have our lovely student, Matthew Nee here. He's from San Diego State, so he's helping us out a little bit today. All right. So we always like to start these off. I'm sure some of you guys have heard this if you've been to our previous workshops. Talking about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So who here has heard of a growth mindset? Okay, a couple hands. If you don't mind, if somebody give me their best explanation of a growth mindset.
Well, for me, it's always wanting to learn new things, always keeping it, active, thinking about how can I improve, how can I address things in a different way.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. So again, so she said, wanting to learn new things, staying, on top of, having that mindset of growing and working on and understanding these things, right? So that's the biggest thing we like to talk about is, again, learning these concepts and not just like wanting to look smart, right? So understanding. And we always like to start our workshops off talking about this because we hope to learn just as much from you guys as you learn from us. And then we ask that everyone please has their growth mindset on today. Can I get a nod from everybody? Growth mindset today? Okay. We just want to say that this is for educational purposes only. So we have not evaluated any of you guys individually. So we just want to make sure, we're going to move and do a few exercises today. So if anything hurts, please don't do it, or ask us some questions and we can maybe make some adjustments. Because we just want to make sure, our number one goal is to help reduce pain, not increase any pain for anybody. So seriously, we mean that. So we want to make sure, again, we want to help you guys as much as we can, and we don't know what's going on with each and every one of you, okay? And it is being recorded. We do send this workshop out to the rest of the members who couldn't attend. So I just want to let everybody know that we are going to record this workshop today, okay? All right.
All right, so pickleball definitely is a growing sport and has definitely been booming in popularity. I'm sure all of you here are players, right? Or else you might not be.
Who plays pickleball? Who here plays pickleball?
Perfect.
Okay, good. I would assume everybody.
Very nice, yeah, very good.
Yeah.
How many have started more recently in the past few years? Yeah, very nice, very nice, very good. Well, as you can see, it is one of America's fastest growing sports, right? So in a recent study in 2018, over 3.1 million participants in the US for pickleball. Okay, so definitely a quite popular and growing sport. So in considering that, I know it has its overlaps with tennis, and so people consider it to be a little bit more mild a sport of tennis just because you are in a smaller court size, right? We are doing a little bit more of a smaller paddle, less quicker movements, right? If you just take it with a grain of salt. And so sometimes that'll lead people to think it's less of a higher risk injury sport for pickleball versus like other sports. But we have been seeing more injuries in the clinic, especially at Auto-Ness Physical Therapy. We've been seeing a little bit more injuries related to pickleball. Okay.
More than tennis? Is that what you think?
Well, we've been seeing a bigger influx of patients with pickleball injuries. We still see patients with tennis injuries as well, but because it is growing rapidly in the past couple years, we just see more people with pickleball injuries. Yeah.
No specific numbers, but just clinically, the amount of people I see that are injured from pickleball way more common than from tennis. And I think it is due to the growing popularity. Everyone in here plays pickleball, and I'm sure there's a lot more people at the club that play who aren't here today as well. So okay, next one here.
All right. So as you can see, because it is It is a growing sport. We do see more injuries, and as you can see, more than 90% of pickleball players are greater than 50 years old, right? So we've got more of our retirement folks that are playing, being active, which we love, and they've chosen pickleball, but because of that, we do see a little bit more injuries related to that as well. And some of the common injuries that we see are sprains and strains. Sometimes they can be associated with falls, right? So some of those fractures, you should see like roughly 28% of pickleball injuries can be associated with fractures and sprains and strains as well, right? Sometimes if you end up falling, you end up bracing out. Sometimes it can lead to fractures or other strains. If you haven't done quite as good of a warm-up, sometimes we get those little pulls, things like that. We are reaching for different, when we're reaching for the ball, okay? So typically with our injuries, they're most commonly treated with a brace. Okay, and then only really 1 in 5 individuals really have to have surgeries, right? Again, dependent on the injury, the severity of it. It's more of like the sprains and the strains. Usually that is more treatable with conservative measures too, okay? And we can see that also females, unfortunately, are typically, we see females more injured than males, right? And that could be related to bone density, could be related to like just structurals, like just our structures for females. Sometimes we do have a little bit less strength in our hips, things like that. And then we do a lot of lateral movements for pickleball too. And so sometimes that can play with how we're performing too. Okay. And so a driver for those injuries, again, is, as I was talking about, those improper balance and those lateral movements. Hi, welcome. Come on in.
Good.
All right.
So, yeah, as Jina said, that, you know, and what we see clinically, they don't have a ton of numbers on this because, again, it's such a growing sport that they're still kind of in the introductory process for the research. But I would say most commonly the people we see, it's a fall. You know, they went and reached too far, or they backpedaled or something and fell down, and that's where we can get any number of injuries. Shoulder, head, knee, pretty much anything can happen when you fall on the court. So here, we just have a list. We don't need to go through all these, but again, these are the kind of more common injuries to occur during pickleball. So a lot of fractures, a lot of strains, tendinitis. I know rotator cuff is pretty common. Yeah, I try to use my coaching voice here. So yeah, anyone in here had any of these injuries? Okay, you don't mind me asking, what did you have? Tennis elbow.
Okay.
Yep.
Hamstring, tendinosis.
Yep.
Okay.
Meniscus tear. I almost took out my
Oh boy.
Oh, wow.
Were those all from
Is that all
pickleball or kind of other things?
All on the right side.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Just tennis elbow.
Tennis elbow.
Okay.
And then plantar fasciitis.
Fasciitis. Okay.
Very good.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So tennis elbow, very common one, right? It's not just tennis. It is pickleball. Pickleball is a very similar, you know, stroke, a little bit different, but it's a lot of repetitive motion of the wrist and elbow. And so, yep.
It seems worse than tennis. Tennis elbow.
You're saying
It seems the pickleball is harder.
it's more, yeah. Harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, because again, I would say with pickleball, more similar to ping pong, you know, it's a little more wristy, so a little more of these kind of motions versus tennis, really big, long, fluid strokes like that. So I'd say you're probably right. I mean, we don't have good research on that, but I would agree with that, right? A little more wrist and hand movements with the paddle, okay? Cool, any other questions on any of these injuries here? Okay. Yep.
What's the lateral tear?
Labral tear. So the labrum is kind of like a meniscus of your shoulder, right? So it's the cushion kind of between your humerus and your shoulder blade. So, and it acts kind of similar to the meniscus where it deepens the socket of the joint and provides stability. So a lot of times when you fall on an outstretched hand, you get a lot of compression in there and it can cause a labral tear in the shoulder. Yeah, good. Okay, so here we go. 5 tips here for minimizing some of these injuries that could occur. So number one here, we talk about recognizing physical limitations. So understanding with some of the stuff we talked about already, pickleball, it's not as easy as most people think. And people get competitive. So if you haven't been out there, exercising as much and you go out and just jump on the court and try to be competitive, that's where we do put ourselves at risk. So just understanding your physical capabilities. There is a lot of running and a lot of lunging. There's not too much overhead in pickleball. There's a little bit, but just understanding that those are the demands of the sport and knowing that if you have any limitations or pre-existing injuries going into that. Okay, number two, make time for a proper warm-up. So we'll talk here in a little bit just about a good warm-up routine or some things you can do for that. But super, super important to get a warm-up. And you'll see that we don't really like the static stretching too much anymore. So there's a lot of good research to show that static stretching can actually increase your risk of injury versus some dynamic stretching or,
Static and dynamic.
Great question. So she said, what is the difference between static stretching and dynamic stretching? So we'll show you a dynamic stretch in a minute, but essentially a static stretch is like me just doing this, right? I'm just
like
sitting here holding the stretch. A dynamic hamstring stretch, an example, is I may be doing, a leg kick or something like that. So I'm actually moving, or I might even just do a squat. So I'm kind of lengthening the hamstring a little bit while I squat. So those are more dynamic movements versus just kind of holding my arm across this way, okay? That doesn't mean you shouldn't do any static stretching, but especially for a warm-up, it's gonna be more beneficial to do a dynamic kind of movement for that, okay?
How many of you guys are doing a warm-up before playing pickleball? Good.
Very good.
How many are not? Might be more hands. Okay. Sort of getting that first game to be your warm-up. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Good. Number three, use the right equipment. So we'll talk about equipment a little bit today too, just paddles, shoes, things like that. And then don't ignore form. So we'll talk a little bit about the form. Again, with a little caveat, again, we are not the pickleball experts. We are the movement experts. So we'll talk about having the right mobility and stuff like that. But I know there are some, pickleball and tennis kind of trainers here. So there's some good resources for you guys if you are kind of new to the sport and trying to learn more proper form. But we'll talk a little bit about that today. And then we'll also talk about proper recovery techniques after pickleball. So, I've seen a lot of pickleball players here from the club, and I know some of you play for hours upon hours, multiple games in a row. So making sure we're doing the proper recovery techniques to avoid, muscle soreness or any of these pains and strains that occur later on, okay? Any questions about that right now? Okay. So with that being said, we're gonna kind of go through a few exercises if you guys are up for it. So we'll kind of need to space out a little bit because we're gonna move a little bit. So if you guys don't mind standing up,
can move some of
maybe
these
we'll move
chairs
some of
out of
these
the
out of the
way.
way here.
That's good. Good.
All right. So we are gonna move quite a bit and just make sure, like we said, you understand your limitations because the first one is gonna be a lunge series, okay? So for this one, if you need to use a chair for balance, we can do that too. But we're essentially gonna lunge in kind of multiple directions, okay? So the first one, we're gonna take a step
We're gonna come forward.
and then drop
Good.
straight down
Good.
and then back
Going
up.
into a nice little
okay?
lunge. Good.
And now you're gonna step to the side,
We're gonna come out.
come straight down,
Good.
and then back up, okay? And then if you have space, we'll go backwards. If not, we'll just switch legs and go forward with the left. And
So
then,
if we could step forward and then coming
Yeah.
back into
Good.
a backwards lunge
so
too.
alternating
Yeah.
legs, good. So we call this a matrix because you don't really have to stay specifically forward side. You can go at different angles, similar to pickleball, right? We're actually, coming down to hit.
Good.
So I really like this as a good warm up to kind of lunge in different directions.
Good.
Okay?
So we could always go into a forward lunge. We could go into an angle.
So the
as
backwards
if you're
lunge would
reaching
look like
with the
this.
paddle, right? Going out to the side
that.
if you're reaching out. Even opening up a little bit, right? As if we're doing a little bit of
Yep.
going into like a forehand strike, right? Just getting a
Yep.
nice movement to warm up into some
Okay.
of the motions that you might be going into, right? So that we're nice and primed for it. Going open, yep,
Yeah.
good.
Yep.
Similar, we could switch legs from there. Open up to the
Hurts.
side.
Yeah, so great question.
Out.
We do want our knee
Good. And
to be
open.
right
Yep.
over the middle of our
Good.
foot. So even with the lateral lunge, when I sink down, I want to make sure I'm getting my butt low and my knee is staying right over my
You
foot.
just want to
because
make
if I'm
sure
driving
from
it out
here
too far, you might
that
get
we're
some of
not
that pain, or if I'm
coming in.
here, you
We're
might
not
get pain
coming
too.
too
So
far
even
out.
if I lunge
We
out
want to
this
try
way,
to keep it in
at
line
a,
with our,
like our
second toe,
diagonal,
like our kneecap with our second toe, with
Yeah.
all of these
Yep.
movements. So forward
And
too,
make
want to
sure
make
your
sure
knee's
it's not
driving
caving
too
in
far
or going out
over
too
your toes.
forward.
And what I mean by that
Okay,
is when
even
you
as
lunge
we
down,
go
we don't want to be
outside
way
too,
here.
just making sure it's
we want to
nice
be
and in
straight
line.
down. Like
This will
that.
help to
Huh?
protect our knees a little bit more too.
Good.
Good. Very good. Good.
Very good.
Again,
How's
we're
everybody
doing like the
feeling?
lunges, but also, you know, just reaching
good?
out as
Yeah.
if you're doing
Ready
some
to
of those
play
motions
now?
as you're reaching out for the ball.
How's that feel?
Right? It's nice
You got
to
it
just
down with
stretch
the
out a
lateral
little
lunge
bit more.
too?
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. Good.
Yep. So what I'd say is
Very
you are
good.
kind of getting,
Very nice.
like I talked about, your knees kind of really
Good.
driving
Feeling okay with those?
over your
No
toes.
knee
and we
issues or
want to
anything
get
like
more
that
back
here?
into your hip. So when you step out that right leg, think about getting your
All the way
butt
up when
back
you're
like
doing some
sitting
of
in a
these
chair.
movements or just in
Okay,
general?
So that'll get your hip, your right hip involved a little bit more. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Like a
But
pull.
it's here, almost right here.
Comes all the way through.
Here, but
Yeah.
it's here and here.
Do you feel that when you're playing as
Very
well,
good.
or
Actually, once I'm warmed up, I'm all
it feels a little
All
better?
right.
It sounds like you're
You guys
pretty
ready for
tight
the
right
next
into your
one?
hip flexors, right into your quads. Yeah. And so we do want to
show
try to
the
work
next
into
one?
it. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So we have our dynamic hamstring stretch. So Dr. Kevin did show us one here, right? But we might not have too much room for that one. We don't want anyone kicking anyone. But that is one of the warm-ups you can do, just like a walking. But we can also come into a little bit more of a squat. So we're gonna put one foot in front. Okay, we're gonna have the toe raised. So you might feel a little bit of a calf stretch along with this, but we're gonna come down. So we're gonna sink our hips down,
Yeah.
come up like that, okay?
Good.
Might feel a stretch in the calf or in the hamstring. And you could do this as a walking stretch too. So let's say you're on the
Good.
court, you
So
could
I'd
go
say
down
you
the
keep
length
it
of a
little
court,
closer.
just coming
So
through,
just like
alternating.
this, and then kind of reach down.
Getting a little bit of
and
that
come
calf
up,
stretch and
feel
that
tension
hamstring.
back. Yeah, and
Going
then
into
what
that.
you would do on the
Good.
court, so I would do my
Yep.
right leg, come down, and then I'll step with my
You
left.
could do a length
come
through
down,
there
my
and then
right.
back
So we're
just
doing
to
a little
warm
more
up
of a
the hamstrings and the
dynamic
calves.
movement for that.
Other injuries that we see a lot of are like calf strains, right? You could do either or, okay? Whichever one. I would say you feel a little bit more of that full,
Yeah.
like cross body stretch all the way through. Yeah. Again, from here, don't worry about really
but it
kicking
could
up
be
high,
for- I see it
right? But
more
just
from the
nice
footwork.
warming up at first.
So
okay?
we might need to do
And then
something
you can
about
go a little bit
shoes or
higher, a little bit
inserts,
higher.
but also some specific
Going into the
exercises
hamstring
too.
dynamic.
Yeah. You missed it. Our last one was our plantar
Yeah, so it
fasciitis
takes
workshop.
a
You
little bit
missed
of
that
balance
one.
too into it, but it's nice to
Yeah,
work
that's all right.
into
It is
a lot of
online if you
dorsiflexion.
want
That's
to
what
look
we
at
call
it.
it. Typically, when
it's
we're
on
playing
our,
pickleball, we're all
YouTube
on our
channel,
toes
so
quite a
look at
bit,
that
right?
one.
Getting ready
Yeah.
to get to the ball, right? And so just stretching into our calves a little bit more helps prevent some of those calf injuries as well.
Specifically on hamstring
Good.
versus just a static stretch. versus
Very
that.
good.
Right. So,
Are you feeling
again,
more
what they're
tightness on
finding
one
in
side
research
versus the
now
other?
is doing a
Or
static
yeah,
stretch actually
yeah.
can reduce force
Tight-
output of the
Gotcha.
muscle.
Yeah.
So essentially,
Yeah,
you're kind of
exactly.
weakening
And
the
it just
muscle
can be a
before
little
you even
bit just
start.
going
Now,
down the length,
dynamic,
coming
again, now
back
we're
in just to
actually
get those
moving.
movements
So I'm not
going.
just
Yeah,
holding
that
a
blood
stretch for
flowing
30,
too.
60 seconds, right?
Very
It's like
good.
a quick, 5-6 seconds, but now, I'm getting in that mobility. And same thing with the lunge, right? Because if we're warming up
Where
the
are you
lunge
feeling it
like
for that
this,
one?
that's more dynamic,
I'll feel
which is what I'm going to do.
Gotcha.
I got to reach
I
low
love
to
it.
hit
Hip
that.
swings.
Or even
Hip swings
reach
are
out to
very
the
good. That's
side.
one of
So
my favorite
you're
ones
warming
to
up the
do. Just
tissues
coming
more for the
forward, so you could
movement
grab
that
onto
you're doing.
something,
Okay,
coming
versus
forward
just
and back, just to help
this,
swing the hips around.
We're not really doing that
right? You can
at
come
all
in
while
and
we're
out.
playing. So
Okay, just to help open up the
definitely,
hips.
it's a little
right?
more new,
And then you
right?
can
We're
either
kinda
come
like phasing out
across
static
and
stretching
open.
a lot.
Okay?
It's great.
A lot of
It's good
times
for
it's just to help
recovery.
mobilize
So,
the hip a little bit more.
Yeah, so I
right?
still
Yeah.
probably don't do it that
Opening
much,
up,
but
nice.
it's
Yep.
better as a recovery
Trying to prevent some of
technique,
those
'cause
like
obviously it feels
adductor
good, right?
groin
Otherwise people
pulls
wouldn't
too,
do it. Right? It feels good to
right?
stretch the muscle.
Doing on both
but
sides.
definitely, I think more
One of the other
beneficial
ones
for
that
the
we see
recovery.
up there is more of that side shuffle. We won't do it in here because we don't have a lot of room, but this really helps us get ready for those reaches, right? Just even shuffling to the side a bit.
Because you are kind of squatting
Right?
a little bit, right? Just like
Coming
that.
through,
Good.
right? And then even crossovers a bit. I know we don't want to really cross over too much because that's where our feet get tangled up a bit more.
So we don't have a lot of room for this
We
one.
do want to try to
But
shuffle
again, it's
a little bit that
good
way.
warm-up.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of just side shuffling.
Just getting ready into our
The karaoke
position.
is over. You know,
Being
like
able to
that,
stay
right?
light on our toes.
Like this.
Shuffling, making
Yeah.
sure we can come through. Yeah.
I can see the benefit of
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm
Very good.
ecstatic.
Yeah.
You know,
What is karaoke?
So karaoke is the crossovers like this, like a grapevine movement.
Yeah, the
Right?
grapevine.
Being able to
It's the grapevine.
Cross
yeah, so like
over.
over, behind, over.
Oh yeah,
behind.
the
Yep.
capoeira, right? Yeah. So coming
We'll have to
through
throw on
here,
some
it's
music,
good to
and then
work
we'll,
into
then we'll
it.
really get groovy.
Yeah. So some of those movements are good just in case you do need a crossover, but it's better to be into like the side shuffle motion, right? So you don't get tangled up into your feet. Yeah.
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 Good. Okay.
Good.
Everyone still feeling pretty good? Yep, for a little bit more. So the last one we have here is the dynamic shoulder series. So we're going to need a little bit of space. So make
Go
sure we're
ahead
not
and we
hitting
can
anybody.
stagger out a little bit.
Okay. So this is one I like to give for a lot of even anyone who uses their arms for a sport, baseball, tennis, whatever it is. So first we're going to do some forward circles, okay? And then we'll go ahead and switch and we'll do backward circles. Okay, like this. Very good. So usually just do about 10 reps of each. Then we're going to do swimmers. So alternating here, back and forth. Very good.
Good.
Very nice. And then we're going to do some hugs. So you're going to go over and then under. Okay. Over and under. Everyone's shoulders feeling okay here?
Good.
Okay, and then we're going to go into a goalpost position. Okay, and then we're going to be cautious with this one in case you have any shoulder issues. We're going to go up and down like this. Okay, so internal and external rotation of the shoulders. Okay,
Good.
again, about 10 to 20 repetitions of each. Okay,
Good.
very good.
There we go.
Good. Okay, how are those shoulders feeling after that?
A little
There are
tired,
quite a
burning.
few more. Yeah, burning a little bit. There are quite a few more, but that's a good kind of place to start with that, just to warm up those arms again for some of those movements that we do in pickleball. Okay? Any questions on any of those exercises? Yeah.
Do you recommend like warming up on the elliptical or something like that before doing these or after?
Yeah, I mean, I love any sort of cardio. So he asked about warming up on the elliptical before maybe playing pickleball. So yeah, a bike, elliptical. Some people like to do a quick little jog or something. It's a great way just to get the blood flowing and get all the tissues kind of warmed up and ready. And you know, sometimes, you know, even if you didn't have time for a proper warm up and you did a quick little jog, sometimes that's enough. I wouldn't recommend it. I recommend doing more and doing some of these types of things, but a good like cardio, elliptical or jog or bike is a great warm up.
how long should we spend doing that? Like,
I would say, you know, you can get away with 5 minutes, but I'd say about 10 to 15 minutes before. Yeah. So, but you know, some is better than none, right? Yeah. So some is better than none for sure. I'd say shoot for about 10 to 15 minutes of warm up. It's nothing crazy here. We don't need you spending 30 minutes, right? Because you're going to do an activity that's exercise, which is good for you. So we just want to make sure the tissues are ready to do that activity. Okay.
It's recommended directly right before you start, or can you do it at home before you get here?
I would recommend before you start, like on the court. So maybe let's find a good routine. A lot of these, again, you don't need equipment for, so you can do it right there on the court. I'd say if you do it at home, again, better than nothing, but then you're gonna sit in the car and drive and you kind of relax and you could like tighten up before you get back on the court again. So, and we will be sending some of these exercises to you guys, especially if you signed up your email on the sign up sheet. So if anyone didn't sign up, please make sure to put your email on there and we'll send out a program to you guys later or over the next week. Yeah, okay, good. All right, well, we can kind of get comfortable again and sit back down.
Come gather around
We'll be
again.
getting up one more time though.
Yes.
Surprised you didn't mention cat or anything like that.
Yeah,
hip
so-
flexors? Yep.
If we have time, yes. But I would argue that doing something like a lunge is going to warm up and stretch out the hip flexor and the calves kind of together. So again, we could do some static stretching, but I think you're going to get more bang for your buck with lunges and other things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
It's soaking the hot tub and avoid all this.
So get a hot
Yes.
tub before.
So he did, that's a good question because we're going to talk about heat and ice a little bit, but I'll answer that question now. Again, the hot tub, it's great. We get vasodilation, more blood flow, feeling more loose. But, you know, are you getting your tissues ready to perform pickleball activities by sitting in the hot tub? Probably not. Now, it's probably better than nothing, like I mentioned, but we want to do more of these movements to get the body ready for the demand. Okay.
No.
Do you recommend any stretches specifically for tennis elbow?
So yes, we typically lean more towards strengthening for tennis elbow, but it's very like person specific because sometimes if it's too inflamed, doing some of the strengthening and the stretching can actually make it worse. So again, she's asking about tennis elbow. Tennis elbow's, you know, an irritation of the outside of your elbow. Yeah, your extensor.
Yep,
so a
there's
typical
some
stretch we do for that is this one, but sometimes that stretch can actually inflame it more. Because now if that tendon's irritated and we're just lengthening it over and over again, you know, that can flare it up. But there are certain cases where people will benefit from more of a stretching if it's really tight and kind of a chronic issue. So we typically recommend more strengthening, you know, some of the wrists and rotators of the elbow. Okay. Good. Did I answer the question? Probably a little bit roundabout. Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, it's a little more specific. So, you know, that's where you might need to see somebody and get the elbow assessed and make sure you're doing the right things because it's really easy to do the wrong things based on all the Google searches because they'll tell you to do all these things and it might not get better with those. Okay. All right. All right.
Now,
Here.
I know we touched a little bit on the balance portion of it, but definitely balance is an important function of pickleball, right? And so especially as we age, we see that in a study, like over 30% of people over 35 have fallen at least once in the year, okay? This can definitely lead to other major disabilities, not only like fractures, as we saw, like wrist injuries, sprains, things like that, but even if you end up hitting your head, or like there could be concussions on the milder side, or even just more severe or serious injuries as well. So definitely balance, especially with a dynamic sport as pickleball is, we want to make sure that our balance is up to par as well, okay? I know a lot of people, we try to make sure we're not backpedaling, right? Just in case we end up falling and hitting our head. But it is important to be able to go into those movements because you might just end up taking those steps just trying to reach for that ball, right? So you still want to be able to do those movements, even though we want to try to avoid certain things that are a little bit higher risk, but we want to make sure we're confident in those areas too, right? And so the good news though with balance, it can definitely, and non-specific training can reduce the risk of falling, okay? In the study we've seen, even just leisure exercises can help improve our balance and control and then prevent falls, okay? Now as for physical therapists, we do want to incorporate a little bit more specific balance training too, especially you're being active, but just being active in itself really helps in that sense versus someone who's pretty inactive, sedentary, they'll have more balance issues, higher risk of falls. But again, since you're in a more of a dynamic sport here, and with pickleball, we want to definitely train into that concept. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, so for mobility as well, that is another key component for pickleball, okay? Want to make sure we're able to go into the movements that we need. So definitely pickleball is a rotational sport, right? Similar to tennis, might not have as much rotation. We're staying a little bit shorter, but we still want to incorporate as much thoracic rotation. That's what we call our mid-spine right through here, being able to rotate into our thoracic region. So we're not just coming from the shoulder, we're leading to more shoulder type injuries, or just coming from the elbow too, leading to more like tennis elbow type injuries or wrists too, okay? Want to be able to incorporate that motion, that rotational motion through our thoracic spine to help with our gameplay, okay? Other mobility deficits that we see, hamstrings, right? So definitely we see some hamstring pulls too. We're not really ready to go into those lunges or those quick steps, right? Same thing with ankle mobility issues too. Again, I was telling a little bit more on this side, we tend to be on our toes quite a bit in pickleball, just being ready, right? And so because we're on our toes quite a bit, we're really activating our calves a lot, okay? And we don't really go into some of those stretches for calf stretches, hamstring stretches as much, but you definitely wanna make sure we have that ankle mobility so we don't pull, right? So I'm not sure if any of you have had friends that had calf pulls before while playing. Yep, did you have a calf strain twice for yourself? Yeah. So definitely if we don't have that ankle mobility, usually into dorsiflexion, what we call when we bring our toes up towards our shin, right? So we don't have too much of that. That's where we can get into a little bit of trouble because we are pushing off and we strain real quick. That's where we could get a little bit more of those pulls into our calves too.
Yeah.
All right, so definitely mobility is gonna be really beneficial for our pickleball players. Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions about that? Yep.
Well, maybe that might be a goal for everyone.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So I put this picture in here, but I don't really like that picture. I mean, it's showing she has great mobility, but
Yeah.
that's not a great way to stretch her hip flexor. That's that
Yeah.
hip flexor stretch we see. And there's a way more efficient way, and we'll throw that stretch will be in the program that we give you guys. And we won't make you do it now. You kind of have to get down on the floor, but you don't need to really crank into it and lean in that far to get a really good stretch of that hip flexor. Okay. Good question. All right, so we're gonna move a little bit, but we're gonna test the balance a little bit first. So as Gina mentioned, balance is super, super important for pickleball, super important just for daily life and longevity. So, the ability to stand on one leg at least 10 seconds is related to, can be related to early mortality. So you want to be able to have that balance and strength to be able to stand on one leg. And if you don't, then it's time to start training that and make sure we can do these things, okay? So I'll have everybody stand up if you don't mind, and we're gonna try that. So I want you guys to try standing on one leg and see how long you can do it for. Let's try to hit at least 10 seconds, but our goal being 30 seconds.
Very nice.
Okay? Very good. Sometimes it takes a few repetitions if you haven't done it in a while, so good, very good. Everyone's looking pretty sturdy here, like flamingos.
Good.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think
Good.
most of us are hitting the 10
good,
seconds. Very good. Okay, we can go ahead and switch if you're ready there.
Let's see. You might find one side more challenging than the other. Good.
Yep. You might be stronger
Saw
on
a
that.
close ball right over there.
Yeah.
Very nice. Good. Good.
Very good. Good.
Very good. Overall, pretty good balance on this side.
Yeah, everyone's looking pretty good. All right. So the next one we like to test, we call tandem balance. So that's where you're going to be kind of on the tightrope. So heel to toe on one line, and you're just going to hold that position. Okay.
Good. Good. Very nice.
Good. And for those of you who stand on the carpet, you might find it's actually a little more challenging than standing on the hard floor. Adds a little bit of cushion. No, it's a little more. It might be a little more challenging because there's a little more give to it. Yeah.
Very nice. We're looking pretty stable here.
Very good. And then we'll kind of switch legs on that one.
Let's try the other foot in front. Good.
Again, you might find one way is easier than the other.
Good.
Very good.
Very nice.
Good. Everyone's looking pretty good here. Yeah. So these are great balance tests, but also the same way to exercise it and train it. So the next step, if these are way too easy for you, is to get on a surface that's maybe a little uneven. So we have like little pads we use in the gym called an AirX pad. At home, you can simply do it on more cushy carpet or standing on a pillow. and then really try to work that out. I also encourage everybody to do these things with their shoes off as well. You'd be surprised how much, you know, your shoes can sometimes help or not help you out based on how cushiony they are or how much stability they have, okay? So the next one, we're gonna do the Y balance reach. So this one's gonna get a little more challenging, okay? So essentially, we're gonna go back to that single leg balance, okay? And then we're gonna do reaches with your other leg. So as far as you can forward, tap the toe down, okay?
Tap.
And then we're gonna go out to the side and tap the toe down. Now you're not trying, all your weight is still on your stance leg, and then you're gonna reach back if you have space, and then back up. So this is a great way to really challenge the single leg balance, and you'll feel that stance leg working really hard in this position.
You can go a little bit into that bend right through there.
Yeah.
So just to see how far you could reach, okay,
Yeah.
without losing your balance.
So it's kind of like
you
you're
come through here.
doing a little mini squat on your stance leg. Don't actually plant your other leg down like a lunge, right? So it's just a tap.
Good.
You're not trying to put weight on it.
Then eventually, if you feel pretty good with that, you can come out to the side and then even cross. This one's gonna be a little bit harder. Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
This is a hard one.
Yep.
You'll feel that leg working really hard.
You should feel that stance leg starting to work. Just keeping that. You should feel it like all the way through the leg. Good. And then what we like to do in the clinic, we'll mark down like how far you can reach from side to side to see if there's any imbalances through there. So we could check one
Very
side. We could come out to the back. Good. And then yep, we're coming like sort of angled outside.
Perfect dinkum, I like that.
And then angled to the inside like that. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. Those are like sort of like upgraded versions of this, of a single leg balance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the last one we're going to do involves your mid back and your rotational mobility. So a good test for this is actually just cross your arms here, and then we're going to rotate as far as you can to one side, and then you're going to rotate as far as you can to the other side. So again, that's a good test. See if you feel stiff one way versus the other. Okay? You might feel a stretch in your hips a little bit too.
Good.
Is this a stretch you're supposed to do for play, or is this just?
So this is a test, but again, also a good way to stretch it, and a more specific way to stretch it. And again, I want everyone to be cautious if they want to try this one, but we're going to do one leg up on the chair, and then whatever leg is up, you're going to rotate towards that side. So that kind of reduces the amount of rotation coming from your low back, and then I can rotate. You might feel a stretch in the
Go
hip.
ahead, you could turn that
Okay.
around.
Yeah.
Yep. Just share through here.
So again, if your right leg is up, rotate to the right. Okay?
Yep.
Good. You might feel you might not get nearly as far as when you were doing it standing, because now we're compensating less.
Good.
Okay?
Through here.
Good.
And then rotate to the left.
Really
good.
good. So this is a great one to do before playing, right? It's really going to open up that rotation to help you get the whole body moving for that demand of pickleball. Okay. Cramps. So cramps usually.
How's that feel on that right side?
Dehydration. So and electrolytes and what's in the body. So if you're not hydrated enough or not having enough electrolytes, or fatigue. Those are the two main causes of muscle cramps.
How often are you guys
in that
playing
sense.
pickleball?
So, either overtraining or it's getting later in the
Tennis,
pickleball
okay.
match and things start to cramp up. But I'd say most
Very
commonly
nice,
is
yeah.
hydration.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes water is not enough.
very
Usually it
nice,
is,
yeah.
but
Definitely.
sometimes we need some of those electrolytes.
Yeah. So tennis will have a little bit more of the
Yeah, like a
overhead,
smart water or
right?
something
Especially
like
the
that.
serves
Yeah,
are going
that's
to
a
be
little
what's
bit better
going to be the
usually.
most
But there are
different,
some
right?
other like electrolytes.
And so with like
tabs
pickleball,
or
like the
supplements that
tennis elbow,
athletes
since we're
take,
staying
which help a
so
lot.
compact and we're not
But
doing a
also
lot of the
food, right?
rotations,
Like,
and because the court's
bananas are
smaller,
commonly,
we don't
people
really
eat
get a
bananas
lot of that
tend to
full
not
rotation
cramp
that we
as
get
much,
in
so
tennis,
There's a lot
right?
of potassium.
starts with the paddle.
Magnesium?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so because
So
we
again,
don't have,
some of these little
and then
electrolytes in the body that help.
we'll talk a little bit more about like
prevent some of
equipment
that
too,
stuff
and
from
even just like changing how you're
I said
holding the
water is
paddle,
number
even
one.
like the gripping too, especially if we're gripping really tight, sometimes that can lead to a
Yeah.
little bit more tennis elbow, especially with that impact too, we tend to grab a little bit more, right? But even having,
Right. You guys wanna
changing
go
the
ahead
grip
and
a
sit
little
back
bit, or
down.
even the paddle itself, right? If we get a little bit bigger, the
Bananas.
handle, sometimes that'll help reduce some of that gripping. Yeah, sometimes they'll tape it. In tennis, they often do that, like changing out the equipment in that sense. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lifting the calves. Calves, where you lift your toes. That helps stretch out.
Okay, so we're just going to talk a little bit about kind of proper equipment and proper form. And we won't get too much into the details here, but a couple notes I wanted to talk about. There are different paddles. They have different weights. So someone who might have a tendonitis, your first step might be to think about getting a lighter paddle. So I know specifically, I think there's like a 7.5 ounce and there's like an 8 point something ounce paddle. So obviously the heavier paddle is more work for your forearm as you are hitting the ball. Okay, so that's one option. And then,
You get a lighter paddle, the tennis elbow, is what you're saying?
yeah, I say that's one option you can do just to reduce the demand of your forearm and your wrist. Okay, and then shoes. We'll talk about the grip in a second. So a grip is another thing that can be affected, but we talk about court shoes. So court shoes are specifically designed for court sports, racquetball, tennis, pickleball, and they have a lot more medial and lateral stability. So this back part of the shoe we call the heel counter. So in running shoes, they might not have as strong of a heel counter. It's designed for, we call it sagittal plane movement. So I'm just going forward. I'm not doing a lot of side to side. So if you're wearing running shoes while you play pickleball or tennis, you are more likely to roll your ankle or have an injury occur because it's not providing that stability. Okay. Any questions about equipment or footwear or anything like that? Okay, good. So yeah, a little more on the form. We'll talk about the grip. So maybe a little more important for these wrist and elbow type injuries. So these are the three most common grips that people have in pickleball. This one, I'm going to botch the names. I think that's the Eastern grip, Western grip, and then the Continental is the last one. Eastern grip is the most neutral, right? Usually most beginners and most people have this Eastern grip. The Western grip is more for a topspin. It biases the forehand and not the backhand. And so you're going to get more spin on the ball that way. And then the last one, Continental, favors the backhand a little bit more, a little bit less the forehand. So again, if you are kind of more here, I'd say you're more likely to probably have elbow issues just because you're doing a lot more rotation of your wrist and elbow. Okay, so you might think about switching more to a neutral grip if that is the case. And yeah, any other questions on that as far as the grip? Okay.
Wider grip or a thicker grip better for tennis elbow?
Probably because you're going to be not squeezing as tight. But again, tennis elbow is going to be more your extensors of the wrist. So it's not so much the muscles that grip the paddle or the hand. But sometimes that can cause what we call golfer's elbow, which doesn't just happen during golf. I've seen a lot of tennis players and pickleball players get golfer's elbow. So that's the other side from gripping too much. So just be mindful of how hard you're squeezing the paddle and make sure we're not just gripping it super hard, especially if you have elbow pain. Okay. All right, another note on form here. So we look at these two pictures, like who do you think is more ready to receive a serve or a hit, all right? So I know Jina mentioned it a little bit. We talk about the ready position. So just being mindful of being ready for what's coming at you, because that if you're not, that's where we get into trouble sometimes is I'm standing kind of flat-footed and someone hits a shot down the line and I go to reach and you're not ready for it, we can roll the ankle or fall or do whatever. So just making sure we're constantly aware, we're on the balls of our feet, so kind of the front half of your foot, and it's almost like a little bit of a mini squat. So she's got a great ready position there. She's ready to move any direction there, okay? Any questions about that? Okay. And then last but not least, this is just an example of somebody doing a backhand, but he's doing a great job of using his whole body, right? So we talked about the rotation, making sure we're actually rotating through the trunk and the hips when we swing the forehand and the backhand, okay? And that's where, you know, the pickleball and tennis coaches here can really help you work through that. And we just want to make sure you have the mobility to do that. But where we can get into trouble sometimes is if I'm just doing, you know, this one all the time, and that's really going to irritate my shoulder or my elbow or my wrist. So we want to make sure we're getting the whole body moving more fluidly and using all the muscles that we have, okay? Any questions on form or rotation there? All right. So a quick recap here.
Okay. So just to recap what we spoke about earlier, definitely recognizing physical limitations that you had, any previous or current injuries you may have, just making sure that we're not compensating, right? And then that can lead to different injuries, right? So if you know that you have a little bit more limitations in like overhead type motions, out to the side, right? If you know that you are dealing with like a current injury, either plantar fasciitis, tennis elbow, trying to adjust some of those so that we're not constantly going into some of those motions, that we are actually using our entire body, those rotational aspects to help assist us in our play. Okay, definitely making time for our warm-up, right? Not just going straight into a game, doing some of the dynamic movements, even doing a little bit of cardio. I think there's a question on that, just to help get the blood flowing, get the muscles warm, and getting you primed for the movements that you're gonna do when you're actually playing, okay? Definitely, again, using the right equipment. If you need to adjust things, again, you have experts and the coaches here to help you assist in those areas too. And then as well as your form, making sure you're doing the correct movements, okay? And then again, our last thing will be proper recovery techniques. Now, who's doing some sort of recovery, cool down, anything like that after a couple games of pickleball?
Yeah.
Sometimes we got the hot tub, yeah.
Sometimes when I play, my lower back is quite sore.
Okay.
After like 2 hours of play.
Yeah.
So I have to do some stretches for my back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For recovery.
Okay, very good. So you're doing like a nice little cool down stretch routine. Okay, very good. Anyone else doing any ice or other heat, not necessarily the hot tub, nice warm shower to help loosen up the muscles or anything like that? We've got the foam roller. How many of you get really sore after pickleball? Where do you get sore? All over? All over, that's what you just...
My legs, my quad tendons.
Gotcha, okay. And then other than the hot tub, are you doing anything else to help? Yeah, okay. Okay. So definitely we've heard of ice and heat, okay? So what we've found in the clinic for research-based, doing ice, heat, it's more of a preference for people, okay? We don't have very good research that ice will really help reduce inflammation, things like that, or even heat. It's just more surface area. So if you feel like the ice helps, definitely go ahead, you could do the ice. More than anything, it'll numb out that area so that it'll reduce some of that pain or soreness that you feel. Same thing with heat. People usually feel a little bit looser, feel a little better once you apply heat. But a lot of those times, the effects are a little bit more temporary. As soon as you take it off, after about 10, 15 minutes, it's sort of like, I'm not sure if it's done much, right? But again, if you feel like it's been helping, go ahead and do the ice or the heat. We just don't find a good research that it really makes changes, lasting changes, okay? Stretching too, this is a good area. We can do a little bit more of the static stretching. In the beginning, we want to do a little bit more of our dynamic stretches, good proper warm up. At the end, when we're cooling down, especially if you notice that you're having a little bit more low back pain, your legs are a little sore, you've got a little bit more tightness in the calves or the hip flexors, we can go a little bit more into our static stretches, even foam rolling. If you guys have a foam roller, We're a fan of like lacrosse balls in the clinic too, sort of digging into areas where it's a little bit tighter, if it's into your back, right, staying off the spine, but just areas that's a little bit tighter into the glutes. You can always do it into the calves or the hamstrings as well, right? Just helping to loosen up some of the stiffness through there. And then one of our favorite things is more of our active recovery when we're actually getting more movement again. So if you've done a big day of pickleball, just going into more like another walk the next day, just getting some movements, okay?
The elliptical, we talked about that a little bit.
Elliptical,
so doing kind of some cool downs or bike, things like that. So again, active recovery is always good, right? We don't allow that soreness to set in quite as much. When we stay active, you know, if we just sit on the couch for 2 days after playing 4 hours of pickleball, you might be pretty sore and tight, okay? Any questions about recovery or anything like that? All right. All right. I always like to throw this slide in here as far as we talk about recovery. So expectations, you know, linear line, but the reality is, so if you do have an injury, you know, it can be frustrating because it looks a little bit more like this, right? It's not a straight line, but as long as that line is kind of going up in the right direction, that's what's important, okay? Okay, any other questions, comments, anything else?